Just ahead, there's another edition of the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
And I'm Executive Producer Michael Yaffee.
Michael, a pleasure to be with you once again this week. And this week we're going to take a look at the economy. Within recent days, the numbers that had come out from the Commerce Department are showing things looking better for many people in this country than they had in a goodly number of years. And so we are going to be joined by a National Deputy Director of the Department of Commerce to take a look at that, what he thinks happened, where are we going, and at last, all kinds of questions on the economy. Stay put. The Florida Roundtable begins following these messages.
Have you written a book? You can become a published author with Dorrance Publishing, the nation's oldest publishing services company. Countless authors have trusted Dorrance for nearly 100 years to bring their book to the market. Our professional team will edit your text, design your book pages, and create an appealing, eye-catching custom cover. Plus, our authors benefit from a custom book promotion marketing campaign that makes your book available where people buy books, like Amazon and brick-and-mortar bookstores. So make this free call right now to claim your free author's guide to publishing. Don't wait another day. Take one step closer to realizing your dream of becoming a published author and seeing your name in print. You've already written a book, so the next thing to do is make this free call right now to Dorrance Publishing and get your free guide to publishing. Call right now.
800-485-6003. 800-485-6003. That's 800-485-6003.
Your yard's days of being picked on are over, thanks to the science of Bear Advanced Brush Killer Plus. Its penetrating formula is specifically designed to kill hard-to-control brush like kudzu, poison ivy, poison oak, and wild berries, roots and all. And the concentrate product even kills stumps, so your yard never has to worry about being bullied. Bear Advanced. Get more from the blue bottle. BearAdvanced.com. Always read and follow label directions.
When stocking your hurricane kit, include supplies for at least 7 days, keeping in mind any specific needs, including medications. For drinking water, plan on a gallon per person per day. Some healthy supply ideas include granola bars, dried fruit, rice cakes, and trail mix, as they're nutritional and also have a long shelf life. And don't forget about your pet's needs, too. This hurricane preparedness tip has been brought to you by Storm Peace Hurricane Protection. This affordable supplemental insurance covers you where your homeowner's insurance doesn't. Visit stormpeace.com for your quote today.
This is the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
And I'm Executive Producer Michael Yaffee.
Michael, good to be with you again this week. I'm going to start us off with a little bit of trivia. You know, I do those things. I mean, all the years I've been involved in history and whatnot. And believe it or not, even after all these years, there are still things you can learn where I find myself saying, I didn't know that. And during the past few days, I became aware. And, of course, universities are noted. They give out a lot of honorary degrees, to entertainers and people involved.
Right.
Which president do you suppose was awarded the most out of all 45 of our presidents, including the sitting one? Who do you suppose got the most honorary degrees of all of them?
Oh, man, that is a great question.
Yeah.
I'm going to say FDR.
No.
No?
That probably would have been amongst my guesses, too, you know. The answer is Herbert Hoover.
Really?
He received 84 honorary degrees.
Wow.
And I think, you know, in part that's probably because Mr. Hoover lived pretty much longer than just about anybody else.
That's true.
After the end of his presidency, he lived another 31, 32 years.
Well, yeah. Not only that, but he was really popular before his presidency. He was very popular for helping out with the flood and organizing the flood relief.
He was the Secretary of Commerce at that time, And he was so busy, they used to refer to him as the Secretary of Commerce and the Undersecretary of everything else. To this day, the American Red Cross still uses his plans. The big flood happened in Louisiana and drowned nearly 3,000 people. And there were no flood plans.
Yeah, there was no
time.
FEMA or anything else.
And so the American Red Cross to this day uses the Hoover plan for flood relief.
Did not know that.
And he first president to be on television. Of course, then World War II came along and kind of put the kibosh on that.
Yeah.
But he delivered a speech from Washington to New York, became the first president to speak on television. He's the one that gave us airmail on a regular basis, prison relief. He did a lot of things. And actually, if you look at it, had it not been for the Great Depression,
and the stock market crash.
He probably would be rated among the better presidents that we ever had.
Yeah.
His big problem was that he did not see our economic crash as comparable to the flood.
Yeah.
And needing that immediate work.
That's interesting. That's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah. Anyhow, 84 honorary degrees for President Herbert Hoover, and that to this day is the record. Most honorary degrees awarded to a president. All right. I wanted to pass along, too, that we got word several weeks back. We had a guest on the program who was called a corner coffin boy. He was a B-29 pilot towards the end of World War II. We talked about George Starks. He had a book written about him. He lived in the Orlando area. And on Sunday, July 29th, Mr. Starks passed away at the age of 94. His funeral service was held in Oviedo, Florida, the following Saturday. But he made it long enough to say how much he appreciated and the joy he felt at his story being put out in book form by Regnery Publishing Company. And he was very proud of his record. An incredible man. You can go into our archives and hear that program and see some of the marvelous things he did during the war and after the war, his recognition and his travels in Europe and the great work that he did for this country. George Starks, gone at the age of 94. Well, we need to take a pause along our network line. This is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
We'll continue the conversation in a moment.
Wow, your flowers are gorgeous. What's your secret?
It's no secret. It's Bear Advanced.
You mean these blue bottles?
Uh-huh. I protect my beauties with all-in-one rose and flower care. It's insect and disease control plus fertilizer.
Really? What's this 12-month tree and shrub protect and feed?
Oh, I use it on my trees. It kills bugs for up to a year, plus it feeds. It's that easy. Hey, where are you going?
To get my own. I want a great yard, too.
Bear Advanced. Get more from the blue bottle. Always read and follow label instructions.
A massive Category 4 hurricane has just begun to batter the state of Florida.
Hurricane-force winds extend 220 miles from the center.
More than half the state of Florida is now without power.
It's important to be prepared for hurricane season, thanks to an innovative insurance product called Storm Peace. Being prepared now means not having to worry about gaps in your homeowner's insurance. Storm Peace has no deductibles and pays almost immediately. Use the money for any hurricane-related expense, even evacuation costs. Visit stormpeace.com to receive a quote or chat with an agent today.
In a world of tiny tomatoes and backyard pests, one man and his better half dig deep to save backyard gardens.
Joni, stand by to upload expert videos.
Already loaded, Tom.
Wow, you're good.
You're not so bad yourself.
Tom and Joni McCubbin star in hisandhersgardening.com. Critics rave.
Tom and Joni, they really grow on you. 2 green thumbs up.
Don't miss hisandhersgardening.com.
Wow, your flowers are gorgeous. What's your secret?
It's no secret. It's Bear Advanced.
You mean these blue bottles?
Uh-huh. I protect my beauties with all-in-one rose and flower care. It's insect and disease control plus fertilizer.
Really? What's this 12-month tree and shrub protect and feed?
Oh, I use it on my trees. It kills bugs for up to a year, plus it feeds. It's that easy. Hey, where are you going?
To get my own. I want a great yard, too.
Bear Advanced. Get more from the blue bottle. Always read and follow label instructions.
We are back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, the service of Florida's talk and entertainment networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
And Michael, at this point in the program, we are joined by our special guest, Alfredo Ortiz. And he is a gentleman of extraordinary accomplishments. We are delighted to have him with us. And Alfredo, welcome to the Florida Roundtable.
Reagan, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
I tell you what, instead of me sitting here and rattling off your credentials and whatnot, you go ahead and take a little time here on the front end of the show and share your biographical notes with our audience.
Sure, absolutely. Happy to do so. And Mike, also thank you for having me on the show. Alfredo Ortiz, I am the president and CEO of an organization called Job Creators Network. It was an organization founded about 7 years ago, actually, by a gentleman who we know through his very accomplished stores called the Home Depot. And our founder, his name is Bernie Marcus. And he actually knows small business all too well because he started the Home Depot in Atlanta with just 2 stores. And now it's the major success that it is today with about $120 billion in revenue, employing about 400,000 hardworking Americans across the country. And Job Creators Network was really formed to be able to give small business owners the voice and the megaphone that they desperately needed over the past several years to be able to really, hit it hard in terms of the fight that they've needed for years to be able to support their business growth. And unfortunately, under the Obama administration, small business owners were dying. And Reagan and Mike, you know that small business owners are extremely important, small businesses across the country, but also in Florida. In fact, there are about 2.5 million small businesses in Florida that employ 99.8%, represent 99.8% of all Florida businesses and represents over 40% of the Florida workforce. So we're fighting for Florida small business owners and their workforce across the country. Really just being able to, hit that ground with the message of how important small businesses are. 30 million small businesses across the country employing 60 million people.
So what was it during the Obama administration that you feel was really hurting small business?
Mike, that's a great question. We actually, I was out on the road, talking to small business owners, just trying to get a sense as to what was going on because I could sense that there was just such low levels of optimism. And we did a national survey of small business owners. And what we found, 3 main things were really hurting small businesses and keeping them from succeeding. And it was overregulation, just way too much red tape, overtaxation. In fact, in some cases, 50 cents of every dollar was basically being paid back to the government. And then also the lack of access to capital and lines of credit, primarily driven by Dodd-Frank. Dodd-Frank, as you may also know, drove out about 2,000 community banks had to close because of it, and mostly in rural areas. And so our small business community was really hurt by that. And so those were the 3 main things. And so 3 years ago, we started what was called the Bring Small Business Back Tour, going across the country, talking about the importance of small businesses, the 30 million some odd small businesses employing almost 56 million hardworking Americans. And really talking about that because nobody was really driving that point. Nobody was really talking about that importance. And so we did that 3 years ago. Last year, we actually embarked on what was called the Tax Cuts Now tour, which was really to drive the importance of tax cuts for all businesses across the country and individuals. And then this year, we have our TaxCutsWork.com tour, which is really to try to be able to talk about the successes of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act and really what it's doing for our economy for all businesses, whether you're small, medium, or large.
And therein lies a good deal of what we want to hear from you today, and how things have improved over the last couple of years here for small businesses. A lot of folks think back, and we still hear it to this day. When Ronald Reagan did his tax cuts, and people, they said, they talked about the trickle-down economics, that, it doesn't work, they said. And but here recently we've seen numbers that show that this economy is now in better shape than it's been in years.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point, Reagan. I mean, it's amazing right now when you look at what the economy is doing. I mean, these are numbers that truly are now the envy of the world. 4.1% GDP growth, record low unemployment. In fact, I think we just hit a 3.9% unemployment rate. And there's something very wonky. It's called the U6 unemployment rate, which really is just the real unemployment number. That includes people who are in part-time jobs who want to work full-time. That number was actually quite high under the Obama administration because so many people were driven from full-time to part-time works because of Obamacare, right? Because of the onerous regulations that imposed on small business owners. They just couldn't keep these workers that wanted to be full-time workers as full-time, so they moved them to part-time. We're seeing a reversal of that, which is just fantastic. But we're seeing on these unemployment rates, Reagan, truly, again, record lows amongst all demographics. We're talking Hispanic, Black, Asian, women. I mean, just across the board, these numbers are record low. And in fact, for the first time in history, we actually have more job openings, about 6.5, 6.6 million is the latest number that I've seen, and about jobs available, and just about 6 million people to fill them. So we are really in a great position as a country. And I have to tell you now, the small business optimism is sky high. Now when I talk to small business owners, they're talking about how they're taking these savings from the Tax Cut and Jobs Act and reinvest it back in their businesses, whether it's, they're buying a new piece of machinery or a new truck, or frankly, just, paying higher wages, paying better benefits, and hiring more people. It's a great, great time right now in our economy.
It sounds like you're giving a lot of credit to the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, like you said. What specifically in that bill is really helping small businesses?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I would be remiss to say that the removal of so many regulations, what I call really is now an anti-regulatory environment, right, where we still want the types of regulations that keep people safe, but it's just the over-regulation that's being removed by the Trump administration. If you recall, he promised when he first came in office 2 regulations off the table for every one introduced. He's actually removed 22 regulations. Him and his administration have removed 22 regulations for every one introduced. That is an enormous effect on the economy. The latest estimate that I saw, which was 2016, still under the Obama administration, was that over-regulation used to cost the economy about $1.6 trillion per year. And so we're seeing the removal of that really helping to stimulate the economy. But back to the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, of course, we've seen the corporate rate cuts have been a big infusion of cash back into our economy. Big companies hiring more people, giving higher wages and bonuses across the board. We just saw latest retail numbers are starting to flow through. In fact, Home Depot just released today, again, record number in terms of revenues, really beating the estimate. And that's because people are feeling good about their environment, about their jobs, about their wages now, right? We're seeing wage increases go up. One of the big benefits, though, that came out of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act is really this, what's called, and again, sorry for the wonky expressions here, but it's the immediate expensing. What that has actually allowed our small business owners to do is to go out and buy that piece of equipment, and instead of depending on kind of the 3-year, 5-year, 7-year, 10-year depreciation schedule, they're able to immediately depreciate and expense off that piece of equipment, that investment in their business immediately in the this tax year. That has had a huge benefit. And we're talking from small business owners, whether it's a printer that they're buying an extra printer, a radio broadcast, for example, they want to buy a new board. I mean, we are seeing investments all across the country in these types of investments.
And the pass-through on this, I would also, and perhaps we might need a little more time on it, but it would seem to me that as these things improve for small businesses, even some of the larger companies might see some benefit. And where I'm going with this is driving at this drainage of the outflow of jobs that we got over a long period of time of people putting huge offices overseas, and you get customer service with people you can't understand.
That's funny, Rick. It is so true. I mean, it just used to make sense for these companies to do it abroad because they were having to pay, such huge tax rates, really very, very uncompetitive across the globe. Now at the new corporate tax level, at the 21% rate, it's just so much better in terms of the global competitiveness. Jobs are coming back. We saw Apple, for example, announce that $350 billion of profits that were parked overseas are going to be coming back to this country. Investments in R&D and people and new hiring. I mean, we're seeing this across the board. So these large multinationals that, frankly, were fleeing the country, fleeing this country and the jobs as well, they're coming back. And so it's very, very exciting to see that because it's just economics at work, right? And, we hear Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer say, oh, this is just a big benefit for these rich fat cats and stuff like that. Well, it's actually benefit for corporations to be able to invest back into this country, into the businesses here. And so what we really have done now is we have level set and, frankly, made the U.S. an extremely competitive market for people to compete and operate in. And I have to tell you, the people who are really bemoaning this tax cut is Ireland, for example. I'm telling you, you look at some of the newspapers out, they're very concerned with what's happened now in the U.S. because the benefits that used to exist for them, for our U.S. companies to go overseas is no longer there. So the jobs are staying here, and that's why we're seeing this kind of optimism.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how would you specifically respond to the Democrats when they say, all this does is benefit the big corporations and the rich? How would you respond specifically on how small business benefits from this?
Well, what Mike, I think what that shows really is just so many of these folks, so many of these Democrats just have never actually run a business. I used to own a small business myself, actually two small businesses, one which had contractors and one which had direct employees. But they all had large companies. All my biggest customers were large companies, right? And one thing I knew for sure, when large companies did well, I did well. When they didn't do well, I didn't do well. If you remember, there was one of the lowest points really in our economy when things were really dragging. All the Christmas parties were always canceled, right? And, what would happen? Because there was no money to spend on Christmas parties, right? Every single dollar mattered. And so the savings, companies were cutting costs left and right. Well, guess who gets impacted? The local deli down the street, which used to supply that, right? Which used to cater those different parties. And guess what? The guys who were supplying the deli meats and the breads, right? I mean, how that ripples through the economy is so clear. And only the people who really have never run a business make those kinds of statements because they know that when large companies do well, medium and small businesses do well because those are their suppliers. And in fact, some of these companies have direct edicts basically within the companies to say, we want to look for small businesses. We want to look for minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, right? And we want to do business with them. So when they do well, small businesses do well.
Alfredo, we have reached that point in time where we have to take a little bit of a pause along our network line. We want to remind folks that they are listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
Our very special guest this day is Alfredo Ortiz. He is the president and CEO of the Job Creators Network, and we'll continue our conversation following these messages.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-562-7370. That's 800-562-7370. Again, 800-562-7370.
Florida's boating environment is always changing. New sunsets, new experiences that you won't find anywhere else on Earth. But one thing that never changes, boating while impaired by drugs or alcohol. It's illegal in the state of Florida. Boating under the influence will land you in jail, or worse, kill someone you love. It's just simply not a risk worth taking. Learn more about Florida's boating laws at myfwc.com. Brought to you by the FWC Division of Law Enforcement.
Your yard's days of being picked on are over, thanks to the science of Bayer Advanced Brush Killer Plus. Its penetrating formula is specifically designed to kill hard-to-control brush, like kudzu, poison ivy, poison oak, and wild berries, roots and all. And the concentrate product even kills stumps, so your yard never has to worry about being bullied. Bayer Advanced. Get more from the blue bottle. BearAdvance.com. Always read and follow label directions.
Terrorist acts and shootings are often described as great tragedies. They are not. We live in a world so concerned with being politically correct that they're afraid to call evil what it is, evil. Man's sin nature is as old as the Garden of Eden. Many love to blame culture, poverty, or lack of education and opportunity as the problem. They may have a good or bad impact, but the big problem is sin. Acknowledging our sin nature will show us our need for a Savior who changes us from within. That Savior's name is Jesus. He came to die for the sins of all who will acknowledge their sin. Faith in Him strikes a mighty blow at evil. So quit calling man's evil acts a tragedy. They are evil and God hates it. Yet thankfully He loves us in spite of our evil and sin. Jesus not only forgives us, but gives us the want to overcome evil with good. This is Brian Wright, speaking right from my heart.
All right, crew, let's get her dug.
Honey, you want to give me a hand? I'm planting that tree, remember?
No matter how large or small your digging project may be, no matter how urban or rural, you must always call 811 before any digging project. 811 is our national one-call number, alerting your local utility companies to come out and mark any lines they have near your dig site. You must call 811 at least 2 to 3 business days before any digging project, so you can avoid hitting our essential buried utilities. This includes natural gas and petroleum pipelines, electric, communication cables, and water and sewer lines. So before you do this or this, make sure you do this. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811. Brought to you by Common Ground Alliance.
From Pensacola to Key West and all points in between, you're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
Our very special guest this day is Alfredo Ortiz. He is the president and CEO of the Job Creators Network, specializing in assistance to small business owners, small business making 40% of all the jobs in Florida, and that's not to be taken lightly. And Alfredo, I want to ask you, it seems as though things are getting turned around. We've seen the low unemployment and business creations and record employment amongst our minorities, among Latinos and the black population, doing better than possibly that they've ever seen. And these numbers have now lasted a while. But I want to talk about longevity. We seem to be on a right track here. How do you prolong that? How do we keep it going?
Reagan, I think that's a great question. Again, I want to hit, again, just one more time, the importance of small business, because that's, it's what I do, right? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Again, in Florida, 99.8% of all Florida businesses are small businesses, which is an amazing number to think about. You mentioned the stat. Over 40% of the state workforce are employed by small businesses. There are almost 1 million small businesses that are minority-owned. So again, the importance of small business across the country, again, a block of 30 million hardworking Americans and about 56 million employees of these small businesses are dependent on the success of small business. And so one of the things we want to make sure that we do is we continue the success of small business. And that means the type of cuts, for example, the 20% deduction right off the top for small businesses that was included in the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, we want to see more of that, right? We would love to see some of the definitions, and we saw some recent definitions come out that added some clarity to the exclusions and inclusions of what is part of that 20% deduction. We want to see more of that, right? We want to see more service industries picked up. We want to see a deeper cut. We'd love to see a little bit of a bigger deduction on that to close that parity gap between C Corps and S Corps, the larger companies and small companies. So we want to see more done for our small businesses because they are the backbone of our economy. But outside of that, we want to continue to promote the tax cuts themselves that happen because we know that tax cuts work, just like our tour is doing today. In fact, it kicked off yesterday, the second leg of it. We're going to be going to about 26 different states 52 different stops between now and November, talking about the importance of these tax cuts, right? Because that is what's missing, Reagan, is these kinds of conversations, the real kind of conversations, the real news in terms of what is happening is just completely missing in mainstream media news. And so we have to get this message out first and foremost. That's one of the things that's going to help the longevity. But in terms of keeping these tax cuts permanent, that is something that we know that the House Ways and Means Committee and other folks in Congress are working on right now as we speak to try to make sure that these tax cuts for our Main Street small businesses and for individuals remain permanent. Unfortunately, they couldn't do that last year because it was some of these budget rules, arcane budget rules that they had to kind of, stay true to that limited some of that. But this was always their plan, right? Phase one was last year. Phase two is this year. And that's the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act kind of 2.0. And so we want to make sure that we keep on pushing for that. And Reagan, if I could take a couple of minutes to talk about the tariffs, because I know there's been a lot of conversation of that. And a lot of people saying we're very concerned about the tariffs. But, we wrote actually an opinion editorial in The Hill up in Washington, D.C. that talked about Trump being actually vindicated on tariffs because what he understands all too well, he understands leverage. And he understands that it's the biggest trading partner across the globe with every other country. We actually, as the United States of America, has the leverage to make sure that these trade deals are done correctly and are done for our best interest, because that's what it's about, right? It is about America first. And in this particular case, a lot of these trade deals were on the books for decades by Democrat presidents, Republican presidents. They just weren't being fixed. And so what Trump has done in his administration is they've taken a little bit of this great news, the 4.1% GDP growth, record low unemployment rates, rising wages, and they're taking a little bit of that, just like any good business person or president, CEO, owner of a company is going to do. They're going to take those good times, and they're going to take the opportunity to reinvest back in their business. And that's what President Trump is doing. He's reinvesting back in this country by resetting these trade deals. I mentioned a little bit of an analogy here. It's like breaking your arm, for example, right? I think we've all been there. You have to reset it, and sometimes when that reset, you almost have to break it again so that it's stronger even going forward. And I think that's what President Trump has done on these tariffs. We're seeing how the EU already came to the table with fixes. Basically, tariffs have been dropped on both sides with the EU. And in fact, I love how he negotiated the buying of soybeans for our farmers. Our hardworking farmers, true patriots who are standing behind President Trump on these tariffs. He had the EU buy what the Chinese were basically hitting us with tariffs. So he's really a fantastic business person. He's treating it like a business. And I applaud him for the types of efforts that he's doing to try to reset these types of trade deals. And that is going to keep us growing in the long term.
So what do you feel like maybe is the number one burden still on small businesses that's preventing them from growing even more?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. One of the things, and this is currently being fixed as well, is healthcare costs. The Affordable Care Act, as we all well know now, did anything but that. It remains unaffordable and continues to actually have rising healthcare costs. It was doomed to fail from day one because it was set up so that, frankly, more dollars are going to be paid out than we're going to be taken in. It's kind of like Vegas. Everybody probably has been to Vegas at least once, understands the house always has to win, right, for it to stay in business. Insurance always has to bring in actually $1 more than it pays out. And the way the Obamacare was set up, that wasn't the case. It was the reverse. So it was destined to fail, actually. And so we have to control healthcare costs. The president has taken two major initiatives. One is to help on what they call kind of these short-term plans, which now were limited to only 3 months, or allowing for these, skinnier plans to be a little bit longer term and potentially go over a year or two. That's one big fix that he's done. And also association health plans is a big opportunity for small business owners to band together to be able to buy insurance really across state lines and healthcare benefits, frankly, for their employees. Do you know that 1/3 of small business had to drop healthcare benefits the second Obamacare really was introduced because of the skyrocketing healthcare costs that it was bringing? They just couldn't afford the premiums anymore, so 1/3 of small businesses had to drop that. So we've got two fantastic opportunities that are going to help our small businesses to address one of the last outstanding issues, which is healthcare costs and benefits. And frankly, by doing that, It's going to help them better compete for very, very hard, sought after labor now, which is that last piece here that's always kind of a little bit of the flip of the good news, right? When you have really strong demand on labor, you have growing wages, but you also have a labor force that, frankly, is really tight. It's hard to find good labor, is what I'm hearing from our small businesses. And partly is because of the opioid crisis. A lot of these potential employees, they may look great on paper, and then they can't pass the drug test, Mike. And that is really very sad. And that's across every single state in this country we're having this issue. And a lot of that is driven by the Chinese drugs, the opioids that are coming through our borders down south into our country, really just hitting every single state.
It is a large thing, and of course we have seen that in Florida, and I think it bears a little bit of repeating here because a lot of folks, I don't believe, actually understand this, how the enforcement of Obamacare caused so many employers to shift jobs to a part-time basis and say, no, you cannot work more than 28 or 29 hours a week because we can't afford this healthcare business.
Correct.
That's right. It was a very big deal.
Huge deal. And unfortunately, it really hit a lot of our labor force, discouraged them to do that, to frankly to stay. They just said, you know what, I'd rather just opt out. I can't afford to be part-time.
Now, are we making progress in getting it amended? They didn't throw the whole thing out, but it is being, I hate to use the word tinkered with, but it is being amended. Are they making good progress?
They are making good progress. I mean, obviously, one of the most unfortunate pieces that we came one vote short of getting repeal and replace passed. But what has been repealed and replaced is the philosophy that we believe that drove Obamacare originally. That philosophy has been repealed and replaced by a much stronger philosophy, which is about really free enterprise helping this out and allowing, basically patient choice to be the real driver and allowing just economics and this idea of free enterprise to drive healthcare choices for consumers and employees across the country. And so that's being done through the association health plans and through other policies being put in place out of the Health and Human Services Department as well as Department of Labor.
And Alfredo, we are once again at a point where we have to pause along our network line here. We want to remind folks that they are listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Michael Yaffee.
Our very special guest this day is Alfredo Ortiz. He is the president and CEO of Job Creators Network. If you'll stay put, our conversation continues following these messages.
Terrorist acts and shootings are often described as great tragedies. They are not. We live in a world so concerned with being politically correct that they're afraid to call evil what it is, evil. Man's sin nature is as old as the Garden of Eden. Many love to blame culture, poverty, or lack of education and opportunity as the problem. They may have a good or bad impact, but the big problem is sin. Acknowledging our sin nature will show us our need for a Savior who changes us from within. That Savior's name is Jesus. He came to die for the sins of all who will acknowledge their sin. Faith in Him strikes a mighty blow at evil. So quit calling man's evil acts a tragedy. They are evil and God hates it. Yet thankfully He loves us in spite of our evil and sin. Jesus not only forgives us, but gives us the want to overcome evil with good. This is Brian Wright, speaking right from my heart.
If you're in the market for a walk-in tub, stop and listen to this. Now you can buy direct from the manufacturer and save more than 50%. You won't pay $20,000. You won't pay $15,000. You won't even pay $10,000. Boca walk-in tubs are made right here in America by veterans. We're certified and virtually 100% of our tubs are made in the USA. A Boca walk-in tub is made from gel-coat fiberglass. Other manufacturers use acrylic, which is basically plastic. We can deliver a walk-in tub anywhere in the U.S. and have it installed in no time at all. And everybody that calls right now can save $500 towards the purchase of a new walk-in tub. Call now and learn how to get a walk-in tub and save more than 50% off retail prices.
Call 800-308-4917. 800-308-4917. 800-308-4917. Again, that's 800-308-4917.
We are back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
Our very special guest this day is Alfredo Ortiz, the president and CEO of the Job Creators Network. And Alfredo, we know that you're a very busy man, and we want to say thank you for spending all of this time with us today. We're enjoying this conversation. And before we run out of time, we know that there is a website that you have where folks can go and find more information. We want to get that out there, and also the fact that you folks are going on a tax cut tour, and we want to hear about that. So let's start with the website.
Great, thank you, Reagan. TaxCutsWork.com is the website. Again, TaxCutsWork.com. And on that site, we really try to bring to life all the great stories that aren't being told, unfortunately, about how the tax cuts are working for Americans, for hardworking small businesses across this country. We actually have about 4,500 stories so far that we've collected of small business owners that are just writing in about how they're making these tax cuts work for their businesses and for their employees, and really how excited and optimistic they are about the future now. Again, the Job Creators Network is also putting on a Tax Cuts Work bus tour. And in fact, the second leg of it, the summer-fall leg, just kicked off last year. And we're working away across our country with 2 different buses, making about 50-plus stops across the country with 25 states. And we are literally, Reagan, going from corner to corner to corner to corner of this country, from Rochester, New York, up to Spokane, Washington, down to Orange County, California, down to Miami, Florida, and then points in between. We are all over with our 2 buses, really trying to spread this message of the great news about how things are really working and how tax cuts are working for our small business owners. And we ask other small business owners out there to please visit that website, provide us with some of these great stories, and we promise to get as many of these stories out there as we can. Some of them we've converted into actual, videos, video montages that really bring to light some of these benefits. And it's so important. We love storytelling, and we think that there needs to be much more of that, because that is what's going to, I think, make the difference. When people hear these stories, they're going to finally go, you know what, wait a minute. I hear on CNN and all these other, news that this is Armageddon, right? And it's not. It's anything but that. These are working, and we've got to make sure that when November comes around, people remember that these tax cuts work. So thank you.
Yeah, you had just said when November comes around, that's because in November we have the midterm elections, and a lot of people are predicting that the Democrats are going to retake the House. What happens if they retake the House, specifically with tax cuts?
Well, Mike, it's funny because I think a lot of those same people are the ones that predicted that President Trump didn't have a chance in hell, right, to win, and that Hillary Clinton was going to be our next president. So I take that a little bit of grain of salt that some of these talking heads are saying that. But it is going to be a tough election, a tough November, a tough midterm. This is historic in nature because historically, the party that is in power tends to lose on the House in the midterm. Just because that's just the way politics work. But again, I think this president has proven that he is anything but repeating history, and he has proven that he makes his own history. In this particular case, my prediction is that the Republicans will maintain control of the House, but we're talking by maybe 2 or 3 seats. And the problem is here, if the Democrats do take control of the seat, and you're looking at a Speaker Pelosi, she, along with Chuck Schumer and Elizabeth Warren, have already said to the American public, vote for us and we will raise your taxes, because they have promised to repeal many of the benefits that were included as part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So what people are facing coming this November is really going to be the difference between the economic prosperity, right, voting between the economic prosperity that they're feeling now and the lack thereof economic prosperity that existed under the Obama administration. My good friend Steve Moore was on an interview that he was doing, and I love this phrase, and I coined it to him. I have to give him credit for it because it's great. They asked the question of him, wait a minute, Steve, isn't what we're seeing today the Obama effect, truly, isn't this the Obama economy, right? This is the Obama effect. And he goes, yeah, it is the Obama effect. It's the effect of Obama being out of office. And we got to remember that under the Obama administration, we were at anemic growth rates in our economy. Those growth rates have now more than doubled under the Trump administration. And so we need to continue that kind of growth, because that is what's going to get us out of so much pain that we felt under the Obama administration and the sky-high deficits and debt that we have today.
Let me go back across the years historically, and I think I want to know your feeling on how accurate that would be for today. We're doing better. The numbers are looking good. But for many, many years, there were a lot of people going all the way back to Albert Gallatin, who just said, business can do better if we keep our national debt under control. Or in going way back, they said there shouldn't be any national debt. Well, that's only a couple times. But is there truth to that if the government isn't borrowing so much, the markets can get better for business?
Well, I think there is some truth to that. I think there is some truth to that, and we, I believe, need to work on spending in this country. I think that's one thing that, as a next phase, we really need to look at. And these are some of the toughest things, Reagan, that have to be addressed, which are entitlements. For example, Medicare, Social Security. I mean, unfortunately, when this idea of Social Security, for example, in the FDR days came out as an idea, the life expectancy, I believe, was like 58 years old or something like that. Right now, we're I think it's at 78, right? There has to be some logical adjustments to be able to take into account. And again, these are just tough, spending entitlements that have to be addressed at some point to address our spending and debt issues. But I also do know that when you have record revenues coming into the Treasury, that's what's going to help pay down, some of this debt. So we need to continue these tax cuts because we're seeing record revenues across, federal, roles and even at state levels. But we do have to address spending problems. And unfortunately, there has to be that conversation. And in this kind of environment, I'll tell you, that's going to be a tough conversation probably for folks to have. But I can't see any other way, but eventually we have to.
Alfredo Ortiz is the president and CEO of the Job Creators Network. Their website, taxcutswork.com. You can find all kinds of marvelous information there, including the things that we've talked about today. And Alfredo, of course, you have the Tax Cut Tour. The dates and things of that also available on the website, or?
Yes, everything is available there. The locales as well as the dates and times.
Well, you're doing wonderful work, and we appreciate your enthusiasm. And let's keep our fingers crossed that these marvelous things continue to come our way and the way of small business. People I think many people just don't get it. Small business is the backbone of the United States, and I don't think that's putting it too strongly. So
no, it's not.
Well, we thank you again kindly for your time, and we hope you'll come back and do this again sometime soon.
Reagan, Mike, thank you very much for having me.
This is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
A brief closing thought in a moment.
Your yard's days of being picked on are over, thanks to the science of Bayer Advanced Brush Killer Plus. Its penetrating formula is specifically designed to kill hard-to-control brush, like kudzu, poison ivy, poison oak, and wild berries, roots and all. And the concentrate product even kills stumps, so your yard never has to worry about being bullied. Bayer Advanced. Get more from the blue bottle. BayerAdvanced.com. Always read and follow label directions.
I love the ocean.
Me? I love a slow winding river. I love the lake. Slick as glass.
But nothing compares to what you love inside the boat.
My family.
My child.
My best friend from first grade.
If you're behind the wheel of a boat, pay attention. That way your favorite water will always be safe water. Learn more about boating safety at myfwc.com. Brought to you by the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission.
Have you heard of wet and forget shower? You just spray it on today and rinse clean tomorrow. Once a week after your shower, just spray it on all your shower surfaces, even glass doors. The next day, rinse clean. With wet and forget shower, you can breathe easy because there's no harsh fumes. And no scrubbing, too. Make cleaning easy. Pick up wet and forget shower at Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace, or visit wetandforget.com to find a store near you.
Unexpected expenses can hit anyone, and many Floridians turn to small dollar loans to manage those temporary financial challenges. When using a small dollar loan, be sure to choose a state licensed lender. Remember that borrowers have rights under Florida law, including flexible repayment options if you can't repay on time. Make sure you understand the cost and terms of the loan before you borrow, and only borrow what you can afford to pay back. For more information, go to borrowsmartfl.com. This message is brought to you by the Florida Community Financial Services Association.
In a world of tiny tomatoes and backyard pests, one man and his better half dig deep to save backyard gardens.
Joni, stand by to upload expert videos.
Already loaded, Tom.
Wow, you're good.
You're not so bad yourself.
Tom and Joni McCubbin star in hisandhersgardening.com. Critics rave.
Tom and Joni, they really grow on you. 2 green thumbs up.
Don't miss hisandhersgardening.com.
Employ Florida offers resources and services to help you find employment.
Hi, Gary here. Employ Florida helped me improve my interview skills, plus write a great resume. I attended networking events with many employers and other industry professionals just like me. With the workshops and training found at employflorida.com, I was able to land a great job in my field.
Job resources, real results, hired. Employflorida.com. That's employflorida.com.
We are back. This is the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
And, Michael, I did enjoy that conversation with Alfredo Ortiz. He's the president, CEO of the Job Creators Network.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't it refreshing to hear a positive attitude on the economy, huh?
It's really interesting. For the past year, we've had more and more positive attitudes on the economy. And it is really refreshing because it seems like we've had negative attitudes for so long.
Yeah. And I think, we probably could have used another hour and let him go on into the tariff business because it's been my experience over the years that people really don't understand what tariffs do. And, we're getting into a war over tariffs and China's going to ruin us. Well, who says they're going to win? I haven't quite figured that one out yet. But I'm sure that he has a marvelous way of explaining those things, and that people need to understand that if they want to appreciate where the economy is and where we hope it's going to go.
Yeah, definitely.
So, well, Michael, you have got a couple of other venues where you share your notions with folks, and they participate, and I want to hear about that.
Well, yeah, you can follow me on Twitter or search Michael Yaffee, or I'm at Beyond Reason R. You can find my podcast on iHeartRadio. Just search Beyond Reason Radio.
Okay. That sounds like a winner, and I think you'll like what you find. We say thank you for your time this day. We know you have lots of choices. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
We'll see you again next week.
You've been listening to the Florida Roundtable, a news and public affairs presentation of the Florida News Network. The views and opinions expressed during this show are solely those of the participants and not necessarily those of this station's management, ownership, or sponsors. Please email your comments to reagansmith@fnnonline.net.